We are at 7:02. In the interest of everyone's time, I want to go ahead and get started. First off, welcome. My name is Christine Dauenhauer, and for those of you that have been with us since the start of the series, welcome to Wednesday night. It's great to have you guys all with us. If you're new to the series, Bill and Scott Bagley have been with us now for 4 consecutive Wednesdays, bringing a number of great topics that were really created for back in the corporate setting for the Deloitte Partner Leadership Track. And now Bill has been bringing these to several colleges in the area. So we're really, really pleased to have Bill, you back with us. I know Scott wasn't able to join tonight, but he will be back with us next week. And this week's topic is on interpersonal engagement and oral presentation manner and style. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Christine, and good evening, everyone. I appreciate you being here. Tonight, we're going to talk about interpersonal engagement and oral presentation manner and style. Interpersonal engagement is the easy part of this. Most of us are pretty good at that. We like to connect with people. Easy for us. We've learned early on in grade school and high school that this is how we connect and make friends. The second part of it, though, oral presentation manner and style, is something that the vast majority of people try to stay away from. When I was in college, in order to get a Bachelor of Arts degree, you had to take one speech class. And everybody I knew pushed that speech class to the spring of their senior year, hoping that the college would drop it from the curriculum so they wouldn't have to take it. And I'm here to tell you, now that I've worked in business for a number of years, if we had it all to do over again, we would have taken a speech class every semester we were in college, because this is an area that too many people are deficient in, and most people don't even want to deal with it. In fact, Gallup, who runs a polling service, surveying program, and they do a number of different topics, did a survey on the street by stopping people and asking them, if you had to make an oral presentation next week in front of 300 people or deal with the prospect of dying, which would you choose? And people had to actually think about it before they responded. And nothing is that difficult, right? But the truth of the matter is that it paralyzes people from a psychological standpoint to get in front of a group of people and make an oral presentation. It does put you at risk. And that's why it's important that people learn how to master doing oral presentations. Will you ever become perfect at it? Probably not. It's okay. You have to be who you are, but you have to be able to communicate ideas in a persuasive manner. So we're going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to give you some keys to help you get to the point where should be very effective at making oral presentations. Keep in mind that those people who are successful are individuals who do those things that other people refuse to do. And oral presenting is one of them. When you go into any successful organization, usually the person or persons who lead that organization are very good at oral presenting. Many of you are probably saying right now, it doesn't matter. I'm still not going to do it. But I'm here to tell you it's not that difficult if you just work at it. It's like anything else. Okay, in what situations are these skills, oral presentation skills, critical? Most people say, but when you're making a speech or a keynote address, one-on-one network meetings, everybody does those. Leadership sessions where you're motivating others, client interfacing. If we're going to be successful in business, everybody has a client. Some people say, well, I'm going to work in not-for-profit arena and we won't have clients. No, you have clients. Your board members, your benefactors, those are your clients because you have to raise revenue. Training and coaching, facilitating roundtable discussions, proactive audience participation. Another way that you do you mark yourself as a leader is when you're in an audience and you're watching somebody present and you're attentive and you're engaged and you're focused on the person presenting. That's being a proactive audience participant. Small seminar facilitation, keynote addresses, whether you like it or not, at some point you'll probably be asked, would you mind giving a keynote address, or would you mind delivering a eulogy for someone? These are tough. They're tough to do, but you want to make sure when you walk up on stage, you're confident that you can deliver that. 30 or 60-second intro bios, panel discussion, proactivity. Many people are asked to participate on a panel, and that even freezes people up. They're like, oh, well, I'll be on the panel, but I'm probably not going to offer anything. Well, that doesn't help anyone. So it's important to understand when you're part of a panel, you need to engage with the people and offer them advice or thoughts, ideas, roundtable interactions, large setting interactions like networking events, dinners, and luncheons. And all of you are going to be involved in these while you're in high school and certainly in college. If you ever hope to find a job, then you'll be involved in these kinds of networking events. So this is interpersonal engagement and oral presentation. When you're talking one-on-one with your friends, you're doing an oral presentation. It's all about perception and persuasion. We always get back to this perception thing because people who are out there that you're interacting with, engaging with, who really have an impact on your destiny, they're making judgments about you. Now you may say to yourself, well, that's not fair. I don't want people making judgments about me. They can't help it. If they have capability potential, when they see someone, they start making those judgments. So you want to make sure, again, that you're making a positive first impression so that they hold this positive image about you. And then when you get into the oral presentation piece, it's all about persuasion, persuading people to your point of view. When you're in an interview, you're persuading the recruiter that you should hire me. I'm the right person for your organization. The objective then is to prepare you to become effective at interpersonal engagement and oral presentation. That's the fundamental piece. Enhance your credibility and then position you for leadership roles. What critical areas are impacted by poor communication? Again, people say, well, you make a bad speech. It's more than that. Thousands of people fail to get jobs. Just as many are passed over for promotion. Billions of dollars in sales opportunities are lost. Hearts are broken. Otherwise outstanding political candidates are not elected. Innocent victims lose court cases. Needed legislation is not passed. Acute social ills become chronic, and creative ideas that have the potential to enhance life remain fallow in the minds of their creators. Someone once said that cemeteries are treasure troves of ideas for all the great ideas that were buried with the dead because those people had an inability to communicate the idea to other people. Billions of dollars are spent each year by organizations and individuals in an attempt to address this dilemma. It's not necessarily addressed in high school. When you get to college, you take one speech class. If you have to make other speeches, most of the teachers are sympathetic if you don't do a good job because they're like, oh, I've been there. I know how it is, as opposed to holding them to task for not doing a good presentation. Now, the class that I teach at UC for the Linear Honors Plus students, when they're sophomores, 60% of their grade is on their oral presentation. And so all these kids are motivated, obviously, to get A's. So I tell them it's all on you. I'm happy to make the letter grade A on your report, but you got to do all the work. And several of the students will come up to me at the beginning of class and say, Mr. Bagley, I really don't do a good job. It makes me ill to present. Can I opt out? Can I write? And I said, no, you're going to learn how to do this. How would you like to have to present in front of your organization and it made you ill? So we're going to go through this pain because I want you to be able to get to the point where not being perfect, but you can step up in front of a group and command their attention. Okay, the message is the ability to effectively communicate with others is extremely critical to the success of you and to the organization that you'll represent. But the vast majority of people in this world are poorly equipped. Some estimates are that 80% of the people are below expectation, and only 5% are exceptional. Criticalness to your success, you're establishing credibility with clients, superiors, peers, subordinates, and prospects. Effective networking, relationship building, and marketing, you enhance your promotability and earning potential. You win higher percentage of proposals. You sell your organization. You're seen as a leader because you're doing something that no one else wants to do. You positively influence others' thinking. And how about this when you begin to inspire and motivate other people? And that, in the end, that's what this is all about. Venues and forums where you're expected to engage interpersonally. Again, people will say, well, giving speeches. No. Client meetings, staff meetings, counseling, networking, interviewing, receptions, cold calls. There are hundreds of venues or forums or actions that you're involved in where your interpersonal engagement and your oral presentation skills are called on. And again, people fumble around, even on leaving voicemail messages. Instead of getting to the point and being clear and concise and articulate, people bloviate. They run on and randomly talk. People lose interest in it. Okay, what makes a speaker or an individual engaging? Think of someone who is engaging, a business leader, a politician, a motivator, a coach. What characteristics stand out? Confident manner and style. Usually when I'm coaching people on oral presentation, the first time they go in front of a group, they're visibly shaking. You can see their lips quiver. You can tell by the way they move their mouth that their mouth is dry. They wipe their hands on the front of their suit coat or on their pants and wipe the perspiration off their palms. So this is the first part, is that you need to get to the point where you're confident in the way you address people and your manner and style. Then appearance, your dress, your grooming, your posture, sincere interaction with your eye contact, smile, patience. We were told in speech class when I was in college that when you're addressing a group, look at if it's a large group in a room, say there's 100 people in there, and you're not sure you can make eye contact with everyone, you look at the back of the wall, and the people sitting in the audience will think you're looking at them. When you look at the back of the wall, when you're presenting to people, what do people think you're looking at? The back of the wall. You have to look at them. So you engage with people, you fix on their gaze, and you look at them while you're talking. People say, well, it makes me nervous to do that. And that's okay. You got to fight through it, because it's all about sincerity. And if you're not making eye contact with people, they're not feeling locked in. Smile once in a while. Have patience when you're presenting. If you forget where you are, go back to a note laying on a table, look at it, gather your thoughts, and go forward. You need to have passion for the subject. That's being convicted to what you believe in. If you have conviction, you can make a lot of mistakes. But if you're passionate about your subject or your topic, people will buy in. Storehouse of knowledge. If you're making a 15-minute presentation, unless you're doing training, and training can be an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, but if you're making a presentation at a meeting or in front of a group of people to provide an idea or some point of persuasion, it should never be any longer than 15 minutes. 15 minutes is it. You want to leave, you want to stop, at a point where people say, man, I wish Christine had 5 more minutes. I wish she could have been here longer. Then to present for a half hour and for people have been bored, said, man, when's this thing going to end? And this is not an indictment of presidents of colleges, but I've attended a number of presidential discussion or presentations at baccalaureate or commencement. You go on for an hour and 15 minutes. He's lost everybody. People are thinking about all the things they have to do. We had a bishop come to our church a number of years ago, and he was very charismatic and came up in front of the group. And of course, we're all thinking this is going to be an hour presentation from him. And he told us, he said, I've got a 45-minute presentation today. And I told the priest that I had a 45-minute presentation. And the priest said, you can talk for as long as you want to. We're leaving in 15 minutes. And made everybody laugh, and he held it to 15 minutes. And that's what people want. So, but 15 minutes, 15-minute presentation means that you have to have an hour of knowledge in your brain about what you're going to talk about. Because there'll be times in the presentation where you'll lose your place or you'll run out of information, and your brain is a wonderful organ. If you have knowledge in there and you get to a point where you can't think where you should be going, if you relax, your brain will feed it to you. Your brain will kick the information forward, but it has to be in there. So stuff yourself with a storehouse of knowledge, and then present on a topic, and you'll be able to talk forever, but keep it at 15. Then the other piece is persuasive storytelling, that talk about things that have happened to you or experiences that you've had. It creates the presentation to come alive. And people like to hear stories. We all like to hear stories. So learn to be a storyteller. Don't just memorize your presentation or read from slides or read message notes and things of that. Tell a story once in a while, bring it to life. Keep it concise and to the point. It's all about brevity. Body language is critical, deliberate movement. Now, and I can't do this because we're not face to face. If I stand up, I'm going to lose you. But standing in front of a group, keep your hands at your side, just like you're in the military. You don't hold them in front of you like this, or rubbing your hands together, Sisters of Mercy, the hand washer, the ring turner. We all do this stuff. Nervous energy. Keep your hands at your side, just like you're in the military. And then when you want to make a point, you say, 2 things we're going to talk about today. The first one is, and the second one is, and then you put your hand to your side, then you talk. It sounds like it's easy to do. It's very difficult because you feel you're robotic. But if you're moving around, if you're moving your hands around or you're pacing back and forth, people start watching you and not listening to the message. When you're standing still, they're listening to you. If you start moving your hand around, it gathers light. And so they start watching your hand. That's why you don't want to show it until you're ready to make a point. Talking about measurements today. Last year, we were at 10% growth. This year, we're going to be at 90%. They're watching that. And then you put your hands down to your side. So deliberate movement, gestures are key. Vocabulary. Again, our vocabulary has been dumbed down over the years. So do yourself a favor, learn 1 new word every day for the next 2 or 3 years, and you'll be in the top 5% of people in America. Because people tend to defer to their street slang when they're talking. When you're making a presentation, people won't expect more than that. And then articulation, to articulate what you're thinking about. If you have a thought to present to somebody, you need to articulate it so they understand what it is. Voice modulation. Sometimes it's soft, and sometimes it's loud. Sometimes you talk rapidly, and sometimes you slow it down. It's dramatic versus low key, emotional. The last thing you want to be is monotonal. pauses are important. If I'm presenting to you and I stop, if you're not paying attention to me when I stop, your brain is signaling to you something's wrong. He's paused, and that brings you back to the presenter. And there are times when I'm presenting where I sense that somebody's gone another direction, that they're thinking about what they should be doing when they leave here. And I'll just walk over to them without saying anything, and I just stop in front of them and continue my presentation. And they always look up. And that's just, you never want to call anybody out in a presentation, but you want to make sure people are staying engaged. And then make sure that you have effective audios, visuals, resources, and references. Don't make a presentation without, some people are visual and some people are audio. I need to see things. I like to listen to people, but I also need to see something that makes an imprint on my brain. Okay, I see it now. I hear him, but I also see it. Abraham Lincoln, probably the best speechwriter ever. He didn't have consultants around him writing his speeches for him or advisors. He wrote all of his speeches. The Gettysburg Address was probably the most powerful presentation ever given by a person. It's the shortest speech ever written, but it changed the course of history in the way he addressed it. It also helped that he was 6'4" when the average height of a person was 5'7". So they were automatically engaged by his physical presence. But then his ability to present was magic. And he was a great student of the Bible. He was a self-educated man. He never really went to school, but he was a student of the Bible, and he learned the power of words by studying the Bible. And so when he wrote the Gettysburg Address and focused on the Emancipation Proclamation, it was in such a way that people walked away from that saying, yes, even though the vast majority of people weren't really sure about slavery, they said, we're going to go with the better angels of Abraham Lincoln. This is where we need to be. He was a moral giant, and he expressed himself that way. Winston Churchill carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders during the Nazi air blitz of London. And I'm not diminishing the pandemic we're in right now. It's tough. I know that. People have been in lockdown and people have gotten sick and many have died. But if you're not a student of history, sometime read something on the Nazi air blitz of London, where planes bombarded the city night after night after night, to the point where parents actually sent their children to live with people in the countryside because they were afraid that they would be killed in the bombing. Thousands were killed. This went on for months. And Winston Churchill got on radio every night and did a presentation to the people to stay the course, because the vast majority of Britons, they wanted to give it up. They wanted to go along with Hitler. Say, no, we're tired of this. Let's go along with Hitler so that we're not killed. And Churchill kept them focused on never surrendering until the New World, with all its power and might, join us in this fight. And he probably was the main reason that the Allies won World War II. FDR, Pearl Harbor was bombed. The country was isolationists. Charles Lindbergh led a movement to keep America out of the war. And when they took a vote, and over 80% of the people were isolationists. And when Pearl Harbor was bombed, FDR made a presentation in front of Congress, which he talked about December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. And when he was finished making his address, he got a standing ovation by the Congress, and people ran down to the recruiting branches to join the Marines, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, because they all of a sudden were involved in the war. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, A new age came in 1960 or 61. Dwight Eisenhower had been president. Kennedy appealed to the young people. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. The Green Beret Special Forces came about. The Peace Corps, a lot of social service programs came to life because of Kennedy's ability to communicate to people. And by the way, that's a sound bite. Ask not what your country can do for you. That's what's called a sound bite. And whenever you make a formal presentation, you need to have one or two of those in your presentation. Because if people have heard John Kennedy's inaugural address, if they don't remember anything else about it, they remember that. Christine Lagarde, it's about stimulating people. It's about encouraging them to achieve what they can achieve and to do with purpose. She's a strong leader. And when we almost crashed in 2008, she's the one that took Hank Paulson to task because he failed the world and his inability to keep the recession away. Martin Luther King Jr., probably the most passionate of any presenters. Life's most persistent and urgent question, what are you doing for others? We talk about servant leadership. He was a great student of Mahatma Gandhi. It was all about appealing to people. And when he was only 39 years old when he was assassinated. He gave his entire life for civil rights. And at a time, he was making presentations in Alabama and Mississippi when they were lynching people on a regular basis. You know, he looked into the eyes of death every day because he had a message to communicate. And if you ever have a chance, go on YouTube and listen to Martin Luther King's prophetic last speech, emotional. And he calculated that evening that he may not be around after that speech, and he was assassinated the next day. Mary Barra is the CEO of General Motors. Great presenter. Has to face a lot of tough people, and she knows how to persuade them to her point of view. Okay, the open up concept is the concept that we engage for oral presenting. Open up, organized, passionate, engaging, natural, understanding your audience, and then practicing early and often. A lot of people say, well, I want to present, but I don't really have time to practice. If you're not going to practice, don't present. And then at some point, you need to rate yourself on engagement in these areas: confident, comfortable, organized, natural, persuasive. Are you a storyteller? Are you conversational? Do you have effective visual aids? Are you an effective Q&A facilitator? And 1 to 5, 1 being the best, and most of you are going to be a 3 or 4. Some of you will be a 5. It's okay. But your goal, your objective is to get all of those up closer to 1. And you just do that by focusing on it and practicing. The fundamentals, organization, need to begin with a purpose. So when you're doing a presentation, you think to yourself when you're developing your presentation, I want my audience to take away 3 ideas from my meeting. And they are appreciation for my expertise, what I have done to enhance personal services to my clients, gain an appreciation for how I have expanded my professional network or influenced revenue generation. Okay, obviously each presentation is going to have different 3 points, but 3 points, not 1, not 10, 3. The human mind grasps 3. 3 things I want to talk to you about today. You go to buy a car. There are 3 things you need to know about this car. 3 strikes and you're out. You shot a 3-pointer. 3 is out there. So when you're presenting to a group, you want to keep it to 3. And this exercise crystallizes definition and sets forth a sense of passion. So I know these are the 3 points I want to get across to my audience. And then you need to frame your discussion and your opening. Okay, my objective, my purpose, mission, or goal is to, our current situation dictates that we do this. The end result, the benefit, or the consequence to accepting my proposal will be, and I fervently believe the next step. So here's our mission. Here's the current position that we're trying to overcome. This will be the result, and these are the next steps. Short, sweet, and to the point. Framing your discussion and opening ensures you will state your objective, cover all relevant material, transition from topic to topic, and finish strong. Okay, this is where the human element comes in now. Remember, you're presenting to people. The normal attention span of an individual is 5 to 7 minutes. You're making a 15-minute presentation. But they're only going to listen at one time for about 5 minutes. So you need to tell them what you're going to tell them. This is in the opening. And that's about a 60-second opening. Okay, they're listening. It needs to be a dramatic opening so they listen to you. Then the body of the presentation, 10 minutes. You're going to lose them during that body. And so you have to incorporate some things in the body to make sure you bring them back. Soundbite, adding a vocabulary in there that you know that they won't know. The mood of the country was lugubrious. If they're not listening, the brain is like lugubrious. Okay, now I need to listen here, figure out what this means. It brings them back. And then you have to close, and that takes about a minute. And you tell them what you told them. So you tell them what you're going to tell them. I'm going to help you here. Now I'm going to tell you. And then in the end, you tell them what you told them. It's okay. They want that. And they need it. Okay, the opening for this particular presentation, you tell them what you're going to tell them, 60 seconds. The purpose of my presentation is to help each of you become comfortable with the idea of me as an equity partner. This is a big deal. Okay, the partners are going to have to make an investment in you of a lot of money. So this is the purpose. I want to become an equity partner. The current business environment has placed great demands on all of us. The most significant personal and professional challenges are around developing expertise, personal credibility, and revenue generation. The benefits to addressing these three areas directly impact my ability to successfully serve the firm in technical and advisory roles and to bring great value to our sophisticated client base. Okay. My goal is to become a valuable contributor to the firm and to the external and internal clients I engage. So objective, the situation, the benefits, and the goal. 60 seconds. It's better if you memorize this so you don't have to look at any notes. This should come from your heart. If you have to read a slide or read notes, then they're like, well, how convinced is this person? This comes from your heart. When I was at Deloitte, I was training our partner candidates how to make a presentation to convince the other partners to admit them to the firm. And we had one individual who headed up the Japanese practice unit, and that was not his strength, was presenting. So we talked about how we were going to do this, and I told him to present in a way that focused on the Japanese practice. And we had 15 senior partners from around the region in this room. So it was a pretty nerve-wracking situation for a young partner candidate. And one of the partners there had a Japanese practice unit in Pittsburgh that he was trying to get up and develop. And this partner candidate came out and he put his hands together and he bowed in a Japanese formal introduction. And the first 2 or 3 lines were in Japanese. And he said, I head up the Japanese practice in Cincinnati, and I talked about what he was doing, et cetera. And it was powerful because he interspersed some Japanese into the presentation. And he got halfway through his talk, and the senior partner in the back of the room stood up and said, I'm going to tell you right now, you're in the firm as a partner because we need a Japanese practice unit director. I mean, it was pretty magical for him. It was coincidental too, because that person happened to be there, but it was still a powerful opening. Before he even got through his presentation, one of the partners had made a decision. We're going to make him a partner in this firm. Okay, the body is, you tell them it's 10 minutes. And then you tell them all the things about your expertise, your personal credibility, your personal networking, revenue generation, and you use this by storytelling. You tell stories about how you developed your expertise and why your personal credibility was important and how you developed it and how you brought revenue to the firm. Then you close. You've got 60 seconds. You tell them what you told them. To recap, my goal is to be an owner in this firm. And you go through all this just to close it out. Keep in mind that the secret of a good sermon is to have a good beginning, because this is what people hear first. They're going to make a decision, should I listen or not? And a good ending, this is what they remember the longest, and to have the two of them as close together as possible. You want to open and close with impact. So your opening is only 60 seconds. How you open dictates who will listen. And what you say last is most remembered. So openings can be a quote, an extended pause. I had a person come in to teach our partners how to sell. And I said, it's going to be a tough audience, 300 partners. They don't want to learn how to sell. So when he walked into the presentation hall, they had their computers open and they were going through their email, and some of them were reading the Wall Street Journal. So this guy knew it was going to be a tough audience. And he walked back and forth on the stage for what seemed like forever. But what happened was that long pause, it caused the partners in the audience to say, what's going on? So they all looked up from their computer or dropped the newspaper to see what was going on. And then he spun around and he said, today, I'm going to show you how to sell. He had them. They were locked. And then did they all run out when it was over and say, I'm going to go sell? No, but he was able to plant the seed because he used that extended pause to get their attention. You can use a prediction, a statistic, tell people to write this down, a question to the audience, a current event item, something that just recently happened people can relate to. So that's an opening to get their attention. Humor is good if you're good at humor. But if you're not, you tell a joke and it falls flat, you're dead. Next 15 minutes, people won't care. Okay, in the body of the presentation, you want to have one or two sound bites. Something like, ask not what your country can do for you. Doesn't have to be that dramatic, but some sound bite that will stay with people. Or impact vocabulary, that one word that wakes people up. Okay, we talked about soundbite. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Okay, that's a soundbite. People heard that was the beginning of the Gettysburg Address, but people were locked in. Okay, a date that will live in infamy. Military industrial complex. That's Dwight Eisenhower's farewell address. He told America, he said, make sure that we don't become a military industrial complex, because if we do, there will be wars forever, because our economy will be locked in to the military. What do we have? Military industrial complex. So his soundbite went the opposite direction. And then the one statement that Martin Luther King Jr. said that stuck with most white people back in the civil rights movement was not all the other things he said, but when my little children, I want to find a time when my little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. There were a lot of people in the audience who had morality about them, of like, thinking about my children. Yes. So that was a turning point for civil rights. Organization will make sure you arrive early. sometimes 60 minutes before your presentation. If something can go wrong, it will. I've been pushed for time, ran into traffic, ran out of gas, had flat tire. People don't care. That's no excuse. If you're late to a presentation, you're dead. I got to a presentation 45 minutes early one time. It was at a hotel and they had me in a sunroom to do the presentation. No outlet. I was doing a PowerPoint presentation. I needed to plug my computer in. Fortunately, I was able to track down a custodian who had the world's longest extension cord, and he plugged it in at the reception desk and ran it all the way through the hotel to that sunroom. Saved my life. But you never know when you're going to run into those things. And then it also, getting there early allows you to become comfortable with the surroundings and the room layout, check all the equipment you'll be using, greet people as they arrive and introduce yourself. It makes you more comfortable with what's going to happen. Then again, we get back to the passion, delivering the message with conviction. There's a difference between feeling conviction and conveying conviction. So you can be really passionate about something, and if you don't use body language, facial expressions, movement, gestures, and voice, nobody would ever know. So it's all in the delivery. We talk about passion, the power of delivery. What percentage of impact of a presentation are the words? Well, most people say, oh, that's 75 or 80%. How about voice comfort and confidence? Yeah, probably the rest. Nonverbal, we probably don't pay much attention to that. Just the opposite. 7% words, 38% voice comfort and confidence. 55% of the impact of a presentation is the nonverbal piece of it. This is why people go to acting school, go to drama school. You go to a play and they're not passionate up there on the stage. Who's going to stay and watch it? Appearance, posture, gestures, movement, eye contact, facial expressions, all comes in to the formula to make something work. Okay, delivering the message with conviction. Again, the posture is you square up like you're in the military. You square up with your audience. There's a podium there. You get rid of it. You don't stand behind the podium. People stand behind the podium because they're hiding. Well, maybe if I stand behind the podium, the people in the audience won't see me here. You want to be seen. Get the podium out of the way. Now, sometimes you're locked in because that's where the electrical hookup is for your PowerPoint. So you have to be to the podium from time to time, but you get an opportunity to get away from it. Making eye contact with the people, smile, move with purpose, lose the fidgets. Don't put your hand in your pocket and jingle the change or your keys, or you stand there with your hands to your side, and then when you want to make a point, you make it. Just like this person is doing. Gestures, the claw, and it's hard for me to demonstrate here, but when you have PowerPoint slide up on the screen and you want to take people's attention from the audience to the screen, the claw, you take their gaze and you move it to the screen. This is what I want to talk about tonight. Not something weak like this or like this. It's take your gaze and move it to the screen. Numbers, we talk about that. Two things. You hold it in front of people. Two things I want to talk about. The first one is brevity. The second one is credibility. Then you put your hand down. Comparisons, like this person's doing here. We were at 10% growth. Now we're at 90% growth. And you move from the right to the left because this is how people read. This is how individuals read something. Defined and deliberate. You don't rush. People set records when they make presentations. They go through it so fast. So when I teach or coach people on presenting, I let them present it. And when they're done, they're like, wow, it was only 10 minutes. I got 5 more minutes. I said, no, we're going to slow you down this time. Then we're going to make you be defined, deliberate, walk once in a while, get a drink of water. Because you make people nervous as fast as you move through things. Plus, they're not hearing you. Defined and deliberate. And then they do it again, and it's like, oh, 17 minutes. I got to cut something out. There you go. Voice is about volume, inflection, pace, tempo. Then you have to eliminate the filler. I'd like to be able to ask you, what is filler? So I'm just going to tell you what filler is. Well, tonight we're going to talk about when you finish my class or my coaching on oral presentation, at some point, maybe you'll be in a class that I teach. You'll never be able to watch a news commentator or a politician or anyone else make a presentation without counting the us. And the goal is that you never again use the word If you do, you let it go. You just pass over it. But for every person I've ever coached, every one of them, the first time they do a presentation, the very first utterance out of their mouth is And so I equip my class with either bells or horns or clappers. And when somebody's doing a presentation, every time they do bells go off or horns. It makes people paranoid, but they get it out of there. Even people leave messages on their cell phone. This is Bill. No, it's not Bill. It's Bill. This is Bill. So eliminate the filler. The other filler is, well, we went down to the playground, played basketball, and then I met Jimmy, and then I used to do that when I was a kid. And every time I did it, my dad would say, no, I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know. I got rid of it. And then qualifiers. Another filler, by the way, for this generation is the word so. You ask somebody a question. So we went to this. No, it's not so we went to it. We went to this seminar. Not so we went to it. So people need to learn to get rid of that. When you're doing a formal presentation, and this will make you even more nervous psychologically, people are very critical. If you say so or they hear it. They're like, why are they doing that? These people are supposed to be professionals. So that puts the heat on you. You need to get rid of it. Then qualifiers are, if you're making a presentation to persuade people to your point of view and you say, well, perhaps we should take a look at this direction. No, not perhaps. This is what we're doing. I've presented my information tonight. This is the direction we need to go. Now, if you want to take me to task, we can debate this, fine. But as soon as you say perhaps or maybe or you think we should do it this way, it's a qualifier. You're qualifying your statement, saying, I'm asking you, should we do it this way? No, this is what we need to do. So eliminate qualifiers. Then you connect to the audience. You speak to the interest of the audience. You do storytelling, the eye contact. Remember, if you meet people, then during the presentation, when you're presenting, you may say, hey, John, we were talking about, you say their name. So John's like, yeah, I'm engaged. I'm with you. Christine, these are some things that we talked about earlier. The sweetest sound to another person is their name. If you're doing a presentation, if you met a few people beforehand, remember their names and use it during the presentation to keep everybody engaged. The naturalness piece is you always need to remain yourself while assuming an effective manner and style. Keep in mind the ability to engage is not a skill reserved for a select few. People aren't born with this ability. It's a learned behavior. Everything we do is a learned behavior. It's a natural life sequence, just like walking, listening, eating. You don't think about walking or listening or eating, you just do it. Now, if I told you that 300 people were going to watch you eat and you needed to be careful about how you ate because they'd be making judgments about you, you'd probably take a little bit more care on how you ate. But it's still a natural life sequence. You just go ahead and do it. You make some changes to it. Well, presenting is the same way. The thing that brings you down psychologically. You think people are being critical of you because they are. Storehouse of knowledge, interest, and specialty. The expertise thing we talked about the other day. You think if Pete Rose or Chris Bodie talked about their profession, they'd be able to make a 15-minute presentation? Yeah, it's where they live. 60 minutes of information stored to do 15 minutes. And then read great works of literature. You know, people say, well, I'm not sure why I'm taking this literature class. What am I going to need it for? For an appreciation of words and style. Because when you write and present, it's all about that. So great works of literature prepare you for making presentations. You can view the style of effective engagers. That's called modeling. So if you want to look at people who are great presenters, that helps you model their behavior. You can aspire toward a style, but you should never imitate someone else. You can never be Jesse Jackson. Tried to imitate Martin Luther King for years. Doesn't work. Martin Luther King had his own style. John Kennedy. Many people tried to imitate John Kennedy. They still do today with his gestures. No. John Kennedy. You can model the behavior, but don't try to sound like the person. Enthusiasts will not be denied, no matter how lousy the grammar and the speed and the softness. If you're enthusiastic, more people are going to buy into it. So enthusiasm is key. Speak for practical impact on matters of deep conviction, controlled passion. You think Abraham Lincoln pounded the lectern and paced back and forth quickly when he did the Gettysburg Address? No. Practical impact because there was deep conviction for him. Always understand your audience, the demographics and the psychographics. If you're making a presentation that could be hotly debated by someone of a different gender or race, you're putting yourself at risk. So make sure when you're making a presentation that it's appealing to your greater audience, their interests, their values, their motivators. So you need to learn a little bit about your audience before you present to them. Practice often. These are all the opportunities you have to practice oral presenting. When you're talking to your friends, think about using gestures, raising your eyebrows, modulating your voice, using inflection, leaning into people a little bit. It's okay. They'll be all right with it. When I talk to people and I'm sitting at my desk, I still use gestures. And sometimes they'll look at my hand. That's okay. This is what I want to focus on right here. And then it's okay to get in front of a mirror once in a while and practice alone. When I first started practicing doing oral presentations, I'd go in our bathroom, close the door, and my wife and my 2 sons thought I was crazy because I would be in there making all kinds of sounds, practicing. But if you can watch yourself present, it really helps. Remember, as an audience member, it's important to be a proactive meeting participant. Whenever somebody's presenting, give them the courtesy of your engagement. Be an active listener. Try to learn something. Engage the presenter with affirmative nonverbal cues. But when people are presenting, they look in the audience. They're watching people, and they pick up nonverbal cues from their audience members. Somebody's yawning or talking to somebody else. Now, when I'm teaching a class, these are college students or sophomores, and I'm doing a presentation, and it usually happens the very first class I have. If another student talks to a student while I'm presenting, I stop and say, please stand up. Share with us what you had to say. Oh, it wasn't anything. I said, if it wasn't anything, keep it to yourself. I'm trying to present here. Now, I do it in the first class so everybody gets an idea. He's not going to mess around. And then everybody's pretty engaged after that. But don't wait for somebody to call you out. Just don't do it. If you have to yawn, find a way to turn your head or yawn into your hand. In a large room layout, if you have a question to ask, stand up. Again, it shows courtesy, respect, and It puts you on an equal footing with the presenter. If you have to cough, leave the room. If you only have to cough once, okay. But if you got a nagging cough, don't kill everybody else with it. Go in the other room. Go out in the hall. Don't sniff. Don't ask questions just for the sake of asking one. Nobody likes that. You always review the agenda prior to the event and be prepared. Be prepared to ask a relevant question. Look at the agenda and say, okay, I'm going to ask this question. I want to find this information out. Be positive and do not enter into a divisive exchange. Don't take the presenter a task. Don't challenge them in front of everybody. If you want to challenge them, go up after it's over and say, hey, I want to contest some things that you said here. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about it. Then personally thank the presenter following an event. These are all things that if you have a professional come in, an employer to present to your class, the greatest impact you can have on that person is to go up to them afterwards and thank them. This works for you. Makes them feel good, but they're like, okay, now that's something that the vast majority of people don't do. So, I really respect John for coming up here and saying that. And they make a mental note. They'll ask somebody later, who was that came up and talked to me? Okay, the stress related to presenting is terrible. It rates right up there with flying and death. Oral presentations are the #1 fear in the book of lists. They do put us at risk. There's no doubt about it. When you walk up in front of a group of people, you're at risk. Engaging others in open forums impacts us from a psychological perspective. We unnerve ourselves and hinder our ability to effectively engage others because we're caught up in our psyche. So you had two choices. It puts you at risk. It is stressful. So if you're a leader, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to overcome this challenge. I'm going to get good at it. I may not be perfect, but I'm going to get up there and present. Or you can be a coward and say, I'm not going to do it too hard. Come to the fork in the road, and 95% of the people take the easy path. That's why Abraham Maslow, and all of us have studied Psych 101, Abraham Maslow, the greatest developmental psychologist of all time, said that only 5% or fewer of each given generation will self-actualize because the other 95% are finding an easier way to live their life. Okay, what are the upsides? They're significant because nobody else will do it. So you put yourself out there alone when you become effective at oral presenting. Downsides, you cheat yourself out of a lot of opportunity. You look at your related strengths. You look for areas for improvement. And then what method of learning do I need a coach? Do I need a trainer? Can I do this myself? Does my organization offer Toastmasters? And those organizations that are successful, they have Toastmasters chapters so that you can practice in a non-hostile environment on a regular basis. And then say, instead of saying, I'm never going to do this, say, when will I be able to make my first presentation? And then get it down, put it down, and go to somebody, say, I want to do an oral presentation. Can you facilitate that for me? Sure. And I'll tell you right now, it'll eat you alive until it gets there because you'll worry about it. But it'll make you more effective because you'll practice. And then you'll do the first presentation. You'll get some positive feedback on it. And you'll say, hey, that wasn't that bad. Pretty easy. And then you start doing more and more. And then you get to the point where you really enjoy them. Do the butterflies ever go away? Not completely. You don't want them to because it makes you sharp. But one person said and I don't remember who it was, the butterflies will always be there, but eventually they begin to fly in formation because you have control over yourself and your situation. These are some resources. Tim Cagle's a personal friend, the exceptional presenter. It's one of the best primers on presentation manner and style. And he also did one, The Exceptional Presenter Goes Virtual, which more of us need to know that now than ever before. Own the Room by Sue and Wilkins, How to Work a Room, Lead the Field. One thing you cannot hide is when you open your mouth, you proclaim to the world where you are on the ladder of success. It's a good CD to listen to. And then Merriam-Webster's Word of the Day online, 1 word a day. They make you seem like a genius in about a year because you'll be talking over the heads of a lot of people. Not that you want to be sententious with words, but you want to have power when you present. Any questions? I've got a list here. You can sign up for the first presentation. We'll get you on the calendar.
That was great, Bill. Honestly, one comment. You've got a Word of the Week newsletter that I
Yes.
wanted
Right.
definitely to mention to participants. So I'll catch you offline, and for everybody online tonight, we'll send you a link on how you can sign up for that newsletter because it's
Good.
fantastic.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open the floor. For those who have a hard stop at 8 or shortly after 8, I sent the evaluation form through in the chat. We would love your input on tonight's presentation. We've also put the next 3 presentations in there just to gain your interest on that. We know there's a lot going on in February, so certainly we can take the next 3 where you want to in terms of order. Order as well as whether we conduct them or not. So I'll open the floor for questions. I think perhaps Joseph, you may have had a question, so feel free to go off mute.
Yeah, real quick, how would you recommend presenting as a group, especially if you have a group member who maybe is struggling with presenting more than other group members?
Good question. Actually, in the UC Lindner Honors Plus class, it is a group presentation. We do three people present as a team, and one usually takes the opening, one takes the body, one takes the closing. So the person who's struggling the most, we normally give them the opening, and they practice that so that they've got it perfect. It's 1 minute. Then the person who seems to be the strongest will carry the biggest part of the body, which is 10 minutes. And then another person will do the closing and will help on the body. So you split it up so that everybody has a piece, and the person who's the least proficient at it still feels like they're making a contribution. So I'd say do no more than 3 on a team, on a group. You do more than that, it gets a little bit confusing. People don't know where they should stand or move, and there's a lot that goes into to a team presentation though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. You're being a proactive audience member by asking the question. So you get an A.
Okay, other questions from the audience? Feel free to chat it in also if you'd prefer.
So, when you're in college, and you may even do this in high school too, your professor they won't ask anybody have a question. They'll just go over and say, Nicholas, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this? Stand up and give me your thoughts. Come up here in front and give me your thoughts on this. Tougher.
Okay, I don't see any coming. Oh, here comes one, Bill, from Geo. Thank you, Bill, or thank you, Geo. When hiring, how do you recommend not saying when they ask you one of those random questions which are hard to prepare for?
The truth of the matter is, you know us coming. You need to practice. Maybe a friend or family member should ask you 2 or 3 or 4 questions, and you practice making sure that you don't start it with You swallow it. You swallow because it's there and it's just waiting to jump out. So when somebody asks you a question, pause just a second and swallow get rid of it. The reason why I applied for this position because my heart lies in marketing. Not the reason it's a way that we punctuate our oral presentation is by saying we're telling people blah, 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 which means pause. So what we really should be saying is The Exceptional Presenter by Tim Cagle goes into a number of areas of oral presentation. Not you stop. The is there. You swallow it, that's the pause, and then you go on, finish the statement. It takes practice. I'm the first one to tell you it takes a lot of practice, and I've had students that very frustrated. I had a partner candidate because we kept saying to him, you just stop, you have to stop saying that. You have to do this. Put your hands here, move there. He walked out of the room. He said, it's not worth it. It's not worth it for me to go through all this to become a partner. He left the room, and Tim Cagle, who's the author of The Exceptional Presenter, was working with me. We were coaching this person. He was a high-level partner candidate. He was one of the best in the firm. Outstanding person. He's a good friend of mine. So, but we told him, if it doesn't get any better, you're done. He said, it's not worth it. I'm gone. He left the room. Tim Cagle came over to me and said, should we go get him? I said, no, he'll go to his office and call his wife, and his wife will say, it's worth it. Go back. So he did. He came back about 15 minutes later. He said, I called Jenny, and she said, get back in that room. So it was painful for him, very painful. But he got through it by practicing over and over again. He calls me from time to time now, and he said, Bill, I still don't use the word ever. Never. Never use it. You have to train.
That is great. Bill, we've got one last question.
Okay.
What are some good majors that set up positive career paths for those who are good at public speaking?
I think the communications major in college, just business communications or communications. Scott actually majored, my son Scott majored in organizational communications. He's not on the line tonight, so he's not here to defend himself, but he probably would be the first to tell you he's basically a shy person, and he really struggled doing interpersonal engagement. He's friendly and he really likes people, but he was never one to make the first sound or approach someone. And he blamed it on my wife, me, and our older son John, who we all talk at the same time. So he said, being the youngest one, I never had a chance to say anything. So I learned to be a non-communicator. Great listener. He's a great listener, but was real uncomfortable communicating. So one of the things we talked about when you go to college, maybe you should major in organizational communications. And he did, just for the reason that he wanted to become an effective communicator. And now he is. But it took a lot. I mean, he was fearful of getting up in front of groups. Now he gets up all the time. So organizational communications would probably be the best one.
Thank you, Bill. One hand that is raised. I think it's Kevin. Kevin, did you have a question you wanted to ask? Feel free to go off mute.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Good voice.
Well, Bill, thank you very much. I'll just tell you, I'm 40 years old. I'm an engineer. I've done many technical presentations, and I've gotten through it. What I thought was successfully, but I can just say you've been compelling tonight, and you've gotten me fired up to revisit this area and
Good.
to really address some weaknesses. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Kevin. I appreciate you saying that, number one. And number two, my hat's off to you, because most people will not admit that they have an issue with it. They just try not to have to deal with it. So good for you. And I would say to you that the Exceptional Presenter book by Tim Cagle is a great read. It's very helpful.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin.
I'll say one other thing to Kevin. there's not a group probably more critical than engineers. So if you're making technical presentations to people, that's pretty tough. So good for you.
Okay, Betsy, you're up next.
Hi, Bill. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I'm actually in pharmaceutical sales and have been in the industry about 20 years. And this is all, I've been listening to all your presentations every week. And they're all so relevant. So for me, even talking to my son, but in this world, I was curious with the exceptional presenter. I'm curious to purchase that book. And have you read the one that the exceptional presenter going virtual? Because that is my world right now.
Yes.
Presenting to a lot of doctors' offices in a virtual environment and trying to do that exceptionally well. It's new to everyone. So just your thoughts on that book.
It's a great read. Tim Cagle, I hate to say this, he's a Moeller grad. I'll get through off the air. Yeah, I know. He was a quarterback on the 1970s.
Whoops, Bill, we lost you.
Am I okay now?
There you are. Yeah, you dropped right as you said he was a quarterback.
I think the St. X person cut me off. He was a quarterback at Notre Dame, and on the 1977 national championship team when Joe Montana was actually the quarterback, but he was like a third string quarterback. But he does a great job of presenting. And if he ever comes back to Cincinnati, he lives in Annapolis, Maryland now. If he ever comes back to Cincinnati, he's great to get in front of people. But he realized a few years ago, even before the pandemic, that virtual was the way of the business world. So it's a good read, Betsy. I think you'd enjoy it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments too. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay, and any other final questions? I'm looking for any more raised hands, and we don't have anything in the chat. Okay, well, with that, I will just say thank you again to everybody for sticking with us for the Q&A. It's really good to have some engagement at the end of these. I'm going to put in the chat one more time a link to our evaluation form. We'd love to hear what you thought of tonight's presentation, as well as your input on the next 3 that we have planned. And we will take a look at that data, and we hope to see you all here next Wednesday evening at 7.
Thank you all. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.